Hello and welcome to an episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast with me, Mark Bracknall, Managing Director of Theo James Recruitment. Today we welcomed Ian Kinnery, a highly successful business scale-up coach. And I couldn't wait to have Ian on. I know how highly respected he is in the community, and I also presume and knew this would be a very important therapeutic session for me personally, because Ian works with business leaders and entrepreneurs, and it's exactly what it was. Ian has had a truly remarkable journey in life. He was a very successful business owner. Unfortunately, that led him to severe burnout and breakdown. He's used that as fuel. He's used that to understand what his why is. That is working with leaders to make sure they don't go through exactly what he did. And we talk about that in detail. We talk about the importance of leaders having a why, having a vision. And without that, it's now impossible to get where you need to be. We talk about so much in this episode. We talk about the importance of people, emotional intelligence, and leaders needing to really understand people to get the best out of them. We also talked very tangibly about tips and strategies as leaders to get out what's in your head and understand the wins you have. And just the importance of leaders having some training, whether that be actually an official trainer or a leadership coach, but if not, training yourself and trying to make sure that you are on the right path. So as a leader, as a manager, this is definitely going to be an episode that's going to challenge you, it's going to inspire you, and it's going to get you hopefully out of your head, which if you're anything like me, you very much are. So please help me grow this channel. We are growing a community within the manufacturing and leadership industry. So massively appreciating your likes, subscribe, comments, and sharing this as well. So thank you very much. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy the episode. A massive one welcome today. Today I'm delighted to welcome Ian Kinnery, a business and a scale-up coach who is renowned in the area, very well respected, and can't wait to have a good chat to him today. Normally, we have a good plan session. We're going to do this pretty much off the cuff, which I'm really looking forward to. So welcome in. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks very much. You?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good. So the first question is the same question I do ask everyone that comes on, which is, what does it mean to you to be a leader?
For me, being a leader is a uniquely human art form. We lead people. We don't lead anything else. So it is about people. Uniquely, I would say. I call it an art form because it's a bit science, but it's really about, I think, about trained intuition. And leadership also implies a destination. If you just want to stay in the same place, you don't need a leader, probably need a manager, but a leader is leading us to somewhere. So that implies vision, destination, and forward motion.
Excellent. And I completely agree. And I can't wait to get into some of that with you, because there is a distinction, isn't it, between a manager and a leader. It's not just a phrase. There is a difference.
It is, yeah. And if you read the books, there's lots of debate about it. A lot of which is unnecessary semantics, but there is a difference. And I think the difference is it's about people. And although manager is the most important three letters in the word manager are the first three. And again, leadership is about leading us somewhere. So a prerequisite for a leader is to know where he or she is leading us.
Yeah, and that is so important for the team, isn't it? And I think I really want to sort of pick your brains and that type of stuff, because I do think people struggle with it. Before we do, I'd like to just to take a bit of a opportunity just to ask you what your kind of why is, in terms of why you do what you do, and feel free to add any context in terms of your background and what led you to. So I guess that is probably the question. What led you to want to work with leaders? What do you say?
Well, I've been fascinated by business since I was a kid. My dad had his own business, but my dad died when I was 14. So I thought I would go into his business, but by the time I was old enough, that had gone. Um, so I was really fortunate. After I finished university, I became a graduate management trainee. I happened to fall into the motor industry and don't think cars. I started in the truck business, um, which was really, really fortunate. I mean, big trucks, big money, big characters. It was a lot of fun, as you can tell by the look on my face. And, the fact is that I loved it. I wanted to run a truck business, dealership. And at 29, I was managing director of a multi-million-pound business um, in Birmingham. A couple of years later, I ran the biggest Mercedes-Benz car and truck dealership in Europe. And at the same time, I was trying to raise the money and buy and build my own Vauxhall dealership. 7 or 8 years later on, the business was doing well. I was doing crap. And to cut a long story short, I had a breakdown and I was literally a basket case. I woke up in a mental hospital one day. And, over time I got better and I carried on running big businesses. So my why now is, well, I've got two, if I'm honest with you, Mark. The first one, the primary one, is to stop business owners and business leaders going through that roller coaster, because there is no pressure like the pressure of being responsible for even 10 families and their income. And unless you've ever done it, you can't really envision that. So that was my initial why. And of course, there's a lot of time passed. I've been a business coach now for 21 years. But the other thing that really drives me is my fundamental belief is that a business that's well run benefits everybody, whereas a business that's badly run hardly benefits anybody. So a business that's well run benefits the team, the owners, the customers, the stakeholders. So without wanting to be too woo-woo about it, that's my bit of the world that I'm trying to change. And, I sit down at the end of every year over Christmas, I'll just sit and think about how many people are looking forward to a better year because the environment that they're working in is better than it was, because that's what I'm helping them create.
Amazing. And I think, what I think what's amazing that is you've taken an awful experience that you've gone through, and you've used that as fuel, but you've created your own vision, your own why off the back of that, and that is so important because not everyone does that. Other people might have just sat. Some people might have kept going, and I think that's probably you'll see in a lot of leaders. They'll almost forget that process and be a roller coaster happen all over again. Think it will be different this time. This new business will be different, but actually to use that to what you've done, I think is incredible. But I also imagine it puts the importance of a why for you so highly because you know how important that is for you. So it must be for other people. But to, like you say, and I knew this episode would throw some emotions for me because obviously I guess I'm your target audience in terms of type of people, and you're absolutely right. And as a leader, you have so much responsibility for other people's families. Literally, my mind when you said that, mine went straight to COVID. The announcement when we were literally staring down the barrel at the time of potentially looking at the pipeline, potential business closure, or I literally had to make a list of who I was going to dismiss first, and it was the worst night of my life. Didn't sleep a wink. Thankfully, things were fine, and we were in a fine spot. But I wasn't to know at the time. That night, thinking I've got to sit in front of people and tell them that they're probably going to be out of a job or they are out of a job. It's just the worst. And I think employees don't not appreciate that. I just don't think they know because we don't tell them, do we?
No, and even if we did, you know, my partner's just had a knee replacement, and I might imagine how painful that is.
Yeah, you can't live it, can
But
you?
imagination's limited.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I honestly think employees, and I was probably exactly the same when I work with someone. Not they don't care, but they just presume that's part of the gig. If you take
Yeah,
on that responsibility, you take it on, and you know, not how dare you. There's an element of that there's not a real appreciation for it. So I think what you do is brilliant because I completely agree. I've been part of good businesses, I've been part of bad businesses, and it affects the way you live, and it affects actually the mood and how you show up as a parent, how you show up as a husband, all that. So it is.
it's more than about business.
Yeah.
You know, it really is about life itself.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think probably more so now, leaders are under so much pressure because businesses are leaner than they ever were. They're under pressure. They're getting squeezed left, right, and centre. They've got to make decisions. Their senior management team is probably shrank, so there's probably more on them. They're spinning more plates. So it's never been more important, I think, to really to think that to ask yourselves these questions that I'm sure you're going to talk through. So I think it's fantastically well timed. Typically, when I mean, I know they'll all be different, but when you're working with leaders or businesses, what's the first thing that you like to tackle, or what are some of the first questions you like to ask?
Um, well, it is different in every case. You know, I don't, the one thing I don't do, Mark, is every client is different. Every intervention is different. It might follow a pattern, but to this day, after 21 years, I've never met two people that are starting in the same place and want to get to the same place.
Yeah,
And everybody comes with their own individual baggage, if you like. So it's very much bespoke. But at the very beginning, really what I want to know is, and it comes back to how I defined a leader, where do you want to go?
yeah.
Because no matter how good a coach I am, if you don't know where you want to be, I can't help you get there. So I need to understand, and I have a process to understand where you and the business are, how you think, what you've tried that's worked, what you've tried that hasn't worked, and by extrapolation, I'll know what you haven't tried. But what I really want to know is, where do you want to be? And very often, the answers I get are woolly.
Yeah.
And if you don't know where you want to be, not even I can help you get there. When you jump in your car, if you just put south in the sat nav, it will take you somewhere, but not necessarily to your destination. In fact, it would be a miracle if it did take you to where you wanted to go. And that's the way many of us run our lives. One of the reasons I believe that business owners get like a hamster on a wheel, running faster and faster and faster, is they've never really committed to where they want to be.
If you don't know, how do you find out? If that makes sense.
Um,
Is it a feeling, or is it? Do you know what I mean? Like what?
well, largely yes. I mean, I was going to say, without again trying to sound woo-woo, because I think what I do isn't about woo-woo. It's about hard facts. It's a hard science, but it really is looking internally. Ultimately, the goal of coaching is self-awareness, because that's a superpower. And we all think that we're self-aware, but really we're not. And to answer your question, and it takes time. You've got to look inside at yourself and understand what is it that really floats your boat. And it won't be what other people have told you.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I mean, as I say, my dad died when I was very young, and I think one of the things that I missed in my life was that that guiding figure. So I remember I was a young manager in a big business, and we had a meeting in Hull, and my boss's boss came into the meeting. And I remember him saying, if you do anything and it's not for money, you're mad. And I thought, well, he's a really successful person. Maybe that's the bit that I'm missing. So for the next few years, I know I was consciously chasing the money. What I didn't realize is that that goal didn't suit me.
Yeah.
And so I was misaligned. I was chasing the wrong thing for me. And don't get me wrong, I made a lot of money. I spent a lot of money, but it didn't mean anything. It didn't fulfill me. And it was only really when I started this business that I realized don't get me wrong, I need money. I use a lot of money, but that wasn't the driver. Helping people was the driver. And the minute, funnily enough, I focused on helping people, the money came in.
Yeah.
And I was fulfilled. So I think oftentimes we follow, and I call it well-formed outcomes. We follow things that don't suit us. You know, I've got two clients at the moment that are both very similar. They've just started with me, and they keep talking about money. But I don't believe that that's their real driver.
Yeah.
Now, if I can help them reframe that and find what they're really looking for, a couple of things will happen. They'll be happier and more fulfilled, and the money will come.
Yeah. Yeah. I could not agree more. And look, I'm someone who I'm not driven. I was when I first started out, but I'm not driven by money. But I think sometimes you've got to realize, sometimes you've got to be in a business or in a role for long enough to realize that yourself to some extent, if you haven't got someone like yourself guiding the way. But actually, when you realize what your satisfaction is, and for me, that's always been making a difference to people. Do you know what I mean? And I think as soon when you realize that, you carve out a role within your business to be able to do that. That's when you find true happiness. And like you say, hopefully the rest will come. But I've never, most people I meet, this is probably controversial, but most people I meet who are chasing the money are miserable. They are.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, one of my coaches said to me, and it's a phrase I repeat pretty much every day. He said, Ian, we know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. And it's what we don't know that always costs us. Now, if I go back to my case, I knew how to run a business. I didn't know how to run myself.
Yeah.
And that's what cost me. And the irony is that no matter how bright we are, none of us can know what we don't know.
Yep.
Because we're using the same piece of equipment. The only way we can find out what we don't know, and in this case, what we don't know might be what really drives us. The only way we can find out is through a conversation. And I call that a coaching conversation. And as we start to uncover what we don't know, then we can start to build up that knowledge. And it's not just the knowledge, it's the action.
Yeah.
You know, because coaching's not about the transference of knowledge. If you want to know the stuff, just read the books. It's all there. But knowing and doing are two different things.
Well, why should businesses be prioritizing? Because I think a lot of businesses, and let's take manufacturing, because obviously that's the sector I work in. A lot of them will prioritize, you know, the cost materials, their supply chain. They'll look right now. They're looking at costs. Why should they look at their leaders and how effective their leadership is? And then when they're looking at their training budgets, for example, why should leadership be important to them?
Well, to me, and I think engineering and manufacturing are interesting because I think a business is a machine. we create a business as a machine to do something. Now we've got to know what that something is. However, all the component parts of the machine that we're building are people. Simon Sinek said, if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. And interestingly, engineering, manufacturing, typically those people know how to build a machine, but not a machine with people. Now, naturally, the way we work as human beings is that we follow a leader. Without a leader, typically we have chaos. Now, leadership, as I said at the very beginning, is a human skill. So, in the same way, if I put it in engineering terms, if you're building a machine, you can't build an engine without knowing about lubrication, for example. You can't build a company without knowing about people. And that's the leader's job.
How, and I agree, how involved do you think a leader should be in the people? Because there's that argument in terms of how close should you get to your staff? Should you know them personally? Should it be transactional? How do you get the best out of them? What's your opinion on that? Would you say, you're looking at an operations manager who, has 35 people who's managing at a time? How close should those relationships be, do you think, to get the best out of them?
It's a great question. So I'm going to give you a great answer. It depends. There is always that debate about, are you getting too close to your people? But really that's kind of a false dichotomy. You need to be close to your people because you need to know how they work. You need to know what's important to them. Very simply, I can't help you get what you want if I don't know you well enough to know what you want. So a leader needs to be close, and they need to have the ability to not let the personal relationship blur the business relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The boundaries.
And absolutely. And it will depend. It will depend on our relationship, who you are, who I am. And, if I had a team of 35, leadership isn't I hate the expression, but the Americans call it a cookie cutter exercise. One size does not fit all. And part of the skill of leadership and managing is knowing how I need to address any particular interaction with any particular individual at any particular time. You see, one of the reasons that running a business is so either fascinating or frustrating is that, if I go back to the machine analogy, a cog is a cog. It won't change. And the laws of physics don't change. But you're not the same person that you were when we first came on this call, nor am I. As human beings, we're changing all the time. So, saying one thing to somebody now, you can't guarantee the same output by doing the same thing next time.
Yeah. Or with a different person. So,
and with a different person.
Which proves that, there is the machine element to it. It's like a science, isn't it? But also it's that emotional intelligence piece to understand and to adapt to what they've got going on. Because you don't know what someone's dealing with at home, and you don't know what their history is and how they've got a certain situation.
You don't know what the last person said to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, imagine how difficult physics would be if particles could think. And it kind of puts it in context, doesn't it?
Yeah. Apologies for interrupting this episode with a very quick announcement about my business. Theo James are a specialist talent provider specifically to the manufacturing and engineering sector. I'm incredibly proud of what we've achieved since our inception in 2015. We specialise in roles from semi-skilled trades right the way up to our TJ exec search arm of the business, both on the contract and permanent side. We offer both bespoke one-off campaigns for hard-to-fill roles or a full partnership service where we become an extension of your business. For any information, please get in touch with me or the team. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Thank you. In terms of a lot of people listening to this, obviously will be leaders and will be coaches. There is definitely an issue with manufacturing where people get promoted on merit because they're good at the job, but they don't necessarily have the training or experience in leadership management. And there'll be people listening who have sort of just had to sort of do what they can to get where they are. Do you see that sometimes where does that hinder someone's progression to be able to get to that next level as well?
Oh, all the time. And fundamentally, Mark, I only work with entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I call them accidental leaders. You know, people go into business for all kinds of reasons, but you know, maybe they're a great engineer and they want to do it for themselves. And then they set up an engineering business or they set up a manufacturing business. And then what they find is, God, all my time's taken up with people problems.
Yeah.
And really, had I wanted to be with people, I'd have been a school teacher or a doctor. I wanted to be an engineer. So that happens all the time. I call it accidental leadership. But for the business to survive, for the business to prosper, being a skillful technician, manufacturer, engineer isn't going to get you there. You know, I don't believe that the head of Microsoft spends much time writing code now. Do you?
No, but no, you're absolutely right. And you know what's interesting? I think a lot of leaders beat themselves up because as their job changes in a business, let's say the business grows, there's some guilt there. I felt some guilt there that I didn't do. You know, I was so used to wearing many hats, and I wore that as a badge of honor for 4 or 5 years. That I did everything, and I answered it. I felt some real pride in being able to put out every fire. But then there comes to a point where that is what tips you over the edge, and that's where you get burnout. And I went through that massively because, and it was almost trying to find myself again, going, okay, well, I know I can't do that anymore. I've got to hire the right people and get out of the way. And thankfully, that's what I did. But then I went through a phase where, okay, what's my role here? You're kind of used to the plaudits of being the one that you know brings all the food in, and then suddenly, what is it? That's a difficult time to lead, isn't it?
It really is, and you know, you were lucky that you could think outside the box, or either by yourself or with influence from people. But yeah, we have to pivot, and I think. Certainly, I know I did. You know, the fact that I was a managing director, I was responsible for everything from the profitability of the business to whether there was enough toilet paper in the ladies. And I loved it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't sustainable.
Yep.
And I paid the price for that. And that's how I learned.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully what I can do is help people learn why to pivot and to pivot before they hit the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is obviously why the importance of that why comes in.
Yeah.
Because you need to understand what's right for them.
That situation is still exciting. You know, it gives a buzz. And what I find is that even as we elevate leaders, you know, when something goes wrong, their natural temptation is to dive back into the detail.
Yeah.
To put the welding mask on, or to do the selling themselves, or to whatever it might be, because that's familiar. Yeah. And it takes fundamentally, it takes courage to lead.
Yeah.
You talk about COVID, what a fascinating time that was, because it really tested the ingenuity of leaders like nothing else. And yet, and I'm really proud of this, when we went into COVID, like yourself, what was it, the 20th of March or something?
Yep. Yes.
And, my diary was full, everything was, and then suddenly the doors literally closed.
Yeah.
So what I did was I rang all of my clients and said, well, the good news is I'm going to carry on coaching you unless you tell me not to, but we're going to go online because we can't meet face to face. I'm going to carry on invoicing you. If you can pay, pay. If you can't, fine, just let me know. Everybody stuck with me. Everybody came out of COVID without a word of a lie. Everybody came out of COVID with a stronger business than they went in. And I remember at one point, I was sat, everything was on computer, everything was on Zoom. And, I had LinkedIn open on the other screen, and I saw a picture of an ex-client. And I just dropped him a line saying, I haven't seen you for a while, I hope everything's going all right. And within minutes, I got back this tirade about how cruel the world was and how difficult it was. And I'm sat looking at it thinking, well, hang on a minute. He's in the same line of business as the client I've just spoken to. He's going gangbusters, and yet this guy's crying into his beer. What's the difference?
Yeah.
And I would love to say the difference was me, but the difference was the attitude of the customer. He'd, I'm not going to say given up, but was left to his own devices. The guys that stuck with the process were continuously learning, continuously growing, continuously pivoting their business. And as a consequence, one came out of COVID going gangbusters. The other one, well, to be honest, I don't know if he's still in business.
Really? Right. Just
so what I'm saying is it's really all about attitude.
Well, if if ideally they come to a business coach like you, if someone hasn't got the luxury or for whatever reason can't, let's say like to, but they just can't, what should they be doing? What questions should they be asking themselves? Would you advise any strategies? Is it something they should be writing down weekly, monthly? How do people get started to really get out of their own head, I guess? Because as leaders, we're in our own head more than we should be.
Well, I think we're all in our own heads more than we should be.
Yeah.
And or maybe being in our own heads isn't always good for us. And one of the things that I've learned is, and this is a very, very simple technique, we are hardwired to look at the bad.
Yeah, to worry.
To see the negative. Have you got kids, Mark?
Yeah, 2 kids. Yeah.
How old?
6 and 10.
Okay, so if they come back with their school reports and they've got 7 A's and 1 F, I'm probably talking old money now because they've switched it round, haven't they?
Yeah, but I understand the old one, the new one. But
yeah. Yeah. But if that's the case, the one that gets the most attention is the 1 F.
Yeah, why is the F? Why is that? Because it stands out. Yeah.
Now, that's natural, that's understandable. But as human beings, we are hardwired to see the negative. We call it negativity bias, but actually it's an emotional trait. Somebody said that there are 6 or 7 emotions, can't quite remember now, but the majority of them are negative: anger, disgust. Now, those emotions evolved to keep us safe. That's why we don't eat rotten meat. That's why we don't drink stagnant water.
Yeah.
However, sometimes that predominates and we only see the negative. Now, that That's not a great place to be. And of course, if you're head of the business, all the good stuff happens elsewhere. You get all the complaints, you
Yeah.
get all the things that have gone wrong. So your view of the world is skewed. So a very simple technique is to take a notebook and commit to, let's say, once a day, it might be twice a day, but make it a habit of jotting down, pick a number, 3, 5, 7 wins of the day. So what's a win? Well, a win is anything you want it to be. So it might be for me, well, I've been coaching all morning. It's 12:15 and I've only had 2 biscuits. That might be a win for me. It might not be for you. That doesn't matter. It's for me. But the act of just writing down whatever you choose, 3 or 5 wins regularly, retrains the brain to look at the positive rather than the negative. And years ago, I explained this to a lady I was working with. And to be honest, I'd forgotten about it. And some months later, she wrote me a letter of thanks. And I didn't realize, but before I started working with her, 2 business advisors had told her to wrap the business up. You'll never make anything out of this. The business is still going. Our son now runs it. She's retired. And she wrote me a letter of thanks. And one of the things that she referred to was, I call this a wins diary. And she said, thanks to the wins diary, that got me through, because I could see the stuff that was going right. And as a consequence of being able to see that and not just focus on the bad, my confidence started to build.
Yeah.
And whenever, and it will happen, it'll happen to you, it happens to me, whenever we go through testing times and we start doubting ourselves, which is only human, we've got written evidence that we're not a write-off.
Yeah.
So very, very simple technique.
Great advice. Great advice. You know what's funny but frustrating is that so I went through a stage of doing that and it massively helped. And then I went for a great business touch wood has been pretty good for a little while. And I've stopped doing it because I felt like I didn't need it. But I do. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to keep doing it, keep doing it.
You do. It's like exercise, Well,
Yeah.
I'm fit. I'm fit
Yeah,
now. So
stop
I've stopped going
exercising.
to the gym.
Yeah, great analogy. It is, yeah. Yeah, but
It's like hygiene.
yeah,
You've got to do it every day.
yeah. And look, as leaders, again, part of the gig is we're not going to get many people going, well done. It's expected that we do our job to the best ability because we don't get praised and we don't have managers. So yeah, it's I think sometimes you just need to feel a certain way as a leader. So I think that's
I think
tremendous
you've got to
advice.
find a different way to get. I had a client say to me last week. He said, "Well, I did this, and nobody sent me a note of thanks."
Yeah, yeah,
And I did what you just did. I burst out laughing. He said, "Well, why are you laughing?" I said, "Well, people don't.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
get
We do
used
to
to it."
them. That's the gig, but not the way around. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
And that's I guess it's a bit like being a parent.
Mm, yeah, it is. There's some elements between leadership and parenting is mega. So I can't
Yeah,
completely agree. Great advice. I've got couple of closing questions, if that's all right, and
sure.
nothing too heavy. But just I guess the first thing that springs to mind. What are the best leaders do differently in your experience? The ones you work with. Are there any traits that you see?
I think it goes back to the question that you asked. I think the very best leaders understand their people and care. Um, years ago, I worked for my chairman, the guy I worked for, was, and this was an interesting lesson. It was an absolute so and so. I mean, I've had planning meetings with my team, with the chairman there, and he's thrown his briefcase at one of my managers. My managers were scared stiff of him. I was. But understand the difference. I didn't like him. I wouldn't choose to spend time with him, but I really appreciated working with him.
Yeah.
And for years I thought, what, those two seem that they don't balance up. But I didn't like his methods. But I absolutely believe his main intent was for me to be better.
Yeah.
And somehow I understood that. Didn't like the way he was doing it, but I look back on that not as one of the happiest times of my life, but as one of the fastest developing times of my life.
Yeah. Great advice. And what advice should you give to anyone really? But I was going to say, found out to anyone who's currently feeling overwhelmed right now.
Um, I go back to pen and paper. I would probably suggest the Wins Diary. If it was and that's a kind of medium to long term solution because we start to build up confidence. But whenever I've had somebody, and sometimes I do have emergency phone calls, somebody's overwhelmed, and I just say, well, take a big sheet of paper, draw the biggest circle you can, and in that circle, start to write the things that you're concerned about.
Yeah.
Now, when you've kind of unloaded, and there'll be loads of things, the price of fish, the price of energy, the government, the state of the road outside, there'll be all sorts of things. And then in the middle of that big circle, draw a smaller one and start to put in that circle the things that you can control. See, the big circle represents the circle of concern. But when you start focusing on the little circle, the circle of influence, things change. You don't forget about the stuff that you're concerned about, but they're less relevant. And you start focusing on the stuff that you can control.
Yeah, you know what's fascinating about this? I don't mind sharing so my son's 6 and he's quite an anxious little lad, very deep and a worrier. And I was at that age, and I still am. I still have that type of that in me. But I guess I've learned mechanisms to deal with it. He hasn't. And I went to a free think to school yesterday, which was like a workshop for parents who want advice for that. And the advice for a 6-year-old is the same as it would be for anyone. And it's exactly, that they suggested worry time, which so interestingly is exactly the same where we were suggesting to him that when something happens in the day, just to park it, don't think too much about it, park it for worry time at 5 o'clock with us. And we've got 10 minutes where we just talk through things. And then we talk about what that worry is. Is it something is it practical? Is it something we can deal with and we can fix, or is it not? And maybe if it isn't, we let it drift away. And I thought what was wonderful about it is it's the same advice we give to a 6-year-old, you give to a 60-year-old. We're all built the same from birth, aren't we?
We're all human beings.
Yeah, exactly that. And we all have these, like you say, these emotions, but that are built to keep us safe. He's scared of irrational things like the rain. Do you know what I mean? But he's 6, and to him it's real. And as you grow up, you're scared of things which are a bit more rational. Business owners, you're probably scared of your business failing and not being able to to fund whatever you need to fund. But it's the techniques you use to deal with it are exactly the same, aren't you? It's interesting.
And the fact of the matter is that people aren't logical; they're psychological.
Yeah.
Rational. We're not rational beings. We're emotional beings that can do logic, but fundamentally we're driven by emotions.
Yeah.
And emotions aren't rational.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
There is stuff you can do about them, but fundamentally, and that's why Simon Sinek said, if you don't understand people, you don't understand business.
Yeah, a wise man. But it's look, I just want to thank you massive for this. I've really enjoyed it. I knew this would be a therapeutic session for me because I'll
I'll
be
send
target
you the
audience,
bill.
yeah, exactly. And it was, and I just think, I always reflect to this point and say, well, what have I learned from this episode? Because I always learned something, and so much in this one. And it's just been a nice reminder of why I do it. Why I do what I do, because it's hard some days. You know yourself, it's really hard some days, and I love it and I enjoy it, and I've never dreaded coming in. But I think the importance of understanding why you do it, and actually, I completely agree with that people side. If you don't care about people, I don't think leadership is the right role, because you have to care about people to get the best out of them, and you not just pretend to care. You've got to really care.
Oh yeah, because we can sense
Yes,
lack of sincerity.
100%, 100%. That exactly that. And I think that's where I've seen leadership evolve more so over the last 20 years, actually, where there's less dictatorship, less
Yeah.
transactional. It's more emotional intelligence, which I think is brilliant. And I think this has been a nice reminder for a lot of leaders who might be, driving the car thinking, I'm just feeling really burnt out. That actually, I just need to take 10 minutes a day sometimes just to shut my phone off, to no distractions, get a pad and paper out and write down, today, this week, what have I done that's made a little bit of difference. And they're the times where exactly that, you keep repeating it, and the satisfaction you get from that's amazing. So thank you, it's been tremendous. What's the best way for people to contact you, would you say? Is it email, is it LinkedIn? What's the easiest?
Either. My email address is on the website, and it's very easy. It's ian@kinnery.co.uk. There's only one, so if you Google me, you'll find me. And my phone number's on the website. My phone number's on LinkedIn. Whatever's convenient for people.
Yeah, excellent. I know so many people who have been coached by you and are coached by you and speak extremely highly. So you're that it's a no-brainer if anyone's looking for someone just to really coach them through the time. So thank you, Ian. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome. Can I just one last suggestion?
Yeah.
If you know your why and you lose sight of it, because we all do that, I do that, just think about how can you be constantly reminded. So, for example, what I used to do was I would get testimonials from clients, like the lady I was talking about with the Wins Diary, and I'd put them on a wall and have them framed. And whenever I felt lost, I'd lost sight of my why, because sometimes when you're up to your arse in alligators, it's difficult to remember that the objective was to drain the swamp. I would just go and read that wall of testimonials. So what could you have on your desk that's a reminder of your why, for example?
Great advice.
I've actually got, not at the minute, but I did add a screensaver on my phone. So every time I picked up my phone, it reminded me.
Yeah, great advice. Excellent. And a lovely way to end. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Been good talking to you.
Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of the Manufacturing Leaders podcast. Please just like or subscribe. It really helps grow the show and obviously improve the industry. If you want any more information about Theo James, as I mentioned midway through the episode, please get in touch with me or the team. I would love to talk about how we can help you directly or your business. We are more than just a recruiter, and I know people say that, but it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. We are in business for much more than just a bums on seats approach. We want to help people grow. We want to help improve their lives. And ultimately, I want to work with businesses and people who share the same values as we do. And that's something I'm incredibly passionate about. So please, if that is you and you are passionate about that dream role or passionate about your people, please get in touch with me or the team. I would absolutely love to talk a bit more detail. Thank you very much. Speak soon.